Hello and welcome to our Veronica Mars review. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.
This episode is entitled M.A.D, M-A-D, which also stands for Mutually Assured Destruction. It originally aired on April 26th, 2005. Let's start off with some video games for this week. Alrighty, so April 20th, if you had an Xbox, you could pick up WWE WrestleMania 21, which was not very good. April 21st, if you.
Somewhat somewhat understandable. The case that I remember seeing the advertising and bit for little bits from there, but still the case of wrestling games. Never much played them at the time.
Yeah, if you were playing wrestling games at the time, you should have been playing them on the PS2, because the PS2 had a series of bangers, and the Xbox got kind of like crappy games. Actually, the GameCube got bangers too. I don't know why the Xbox got shortchanged there.
Yeah, probably maybe the obvious reason with Microsoft at the time trying to put out particular stuff, but they only had so much to kind of work with, and certain companies do most of their hiring sort of things didn't exactly go for a grading sort of stuff when they were developing things.
I just figured like Xbox like market at the time was like young men, and I figured like they would have poured a lot more resources into a wrestling game, especially in 2005. But it
Mm.
wasn't very good.
Mm.
April 21st, if you had a PS2, you could pick up Haunting Ground, a game that I have no memory of.
Yes. Interesting case of one of the fantastic survival horror games of the PlayStation 2, but sadly, just because of either advertising, time it released, or just the all around knowledge at the time, nobody bothered to pick up. But it is best known for the case that it also has an additional good dog in the game that helps you out.
Oh, it's a spiritual successor to Clock Tower. Interesting.
Yeah, because Clock Tower was going through some things at the time.
Yes. Yes, it was. Moving on to, still on April 21st, if you had an Xbox, you could pick up Raises Hell. What the hell is this?
Yeah, marvelous case of remember seeing it, never touched it for possibly the obvious reasons.
It's a super almost like cutesy box art, but it's rated M. That's interesting. Huh, okay.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense.
Moving on to April 24th, if you had a Game Boy Advance, you could pick up Popeye Rush for Spinach. I guess the Popeye license was particularly cheap at the time.
Yeah, somewhat understandable, but also kind of the case of, if I remember correctly, this was probably the last Popeye game that has been released in the last couple of years.
I can't imagine anybody's making a Popeye game nowadays.
Well, they've been trying, but it's kind of the case of trying to get the license to work, the gameplay not exactly being up to snuff, and just it's not very much workings.
Yeah, but like, okay, who knows Popeye in 2024? Like,
There's possibly a crowd, but it is very small.
yeah, I feel like that would not be the license I would be gunning for.
Mm.
April 25th, if you had a cell phone, you could pick up Crash Bandicoot.
Which is always fairly interesting, but I'm not sure if we could place it on the list of games that you could manage to play on a toaster.
I, I, I how? It must be like a really like neutered version.
Now, it would be understandable. Like, at the very most, would be either like first stage, possibly one other stage, possibly a boss battle, but not too much else.
I'm gonna see if I can find anything on it quickly. 2005. See if I can find screenshots or anything of it. Because this, it has to look like crap. Oh, they probably made it a side scroller, is what I would guess.
No, there were a couple particular levels that did go that way.
Yeah, it must have. They must have just like adapted it into like a side scroller or something. Because I don't know how else you would have made that work on a mobile phone in 2005. Anyway,
Hmm.
moving on. April 26th. If you had a PC, you could pick up Guild Wars.
You know, the crazy multiplayer online game that was trying to compete with the multiplayer online games that were going on at the time.
Yes, I feel like this one was relatively successful because I feel like it lasted for a long time.
Because again, I can recognize it from the box art in little bits from there, but still kind of the case of can't even vaguely recall any kind of gameplay or whatnot from it that doesn't either mesh with typical RPGs at the time and or supposedly now.
Oh yeah, no, I know nothing about this game, but I'm like, I feel like I've seen the box a million times, but I feel like this was one of the more like
Mm.
successful um, MMORPGs at the time. But I don't know. Moving along.
Mm.
Still on April 26th, if you had a Nintendo DS, you could pick up Pac Pix. It's a Pac-Man type game. Oh, you use a stylus on to draw Pac-Man and guide him around. Interesting. Huh.
That's an interesting sort of idea, using the particular ideas of the system and going along with the gameplay style of it.
Yeah, that is interesting. Also on April
I can
26th.
vaguely remember it through advertising and other sorts of things from there, show off the DS in those sorts of cases.
Yeah, now like that I saw the box art, I'm like, oh, I've seen that, but I never played it. Also on the
Mm.
26th, if you had a PC, you could pick up Psychonauts, which for some reason released
Yeah,
a week later on PC than on Xbox. I don't know why.
most likely reasons, but most likely silly reasons.
Also on April 26th, if you had a PS2, Xbox, or PC, you could pick up, I'm not sure, Obscure. It looks to be some
Yes.
kind of a horror game, I'm guessing. Survival horror game, yes. I don't remember this at all. Any recollection for you?
Not too much aside from the box art I can see on it.
Oh, I don't even remember the box art. But apparently it had music by Sum 41? What?
On the one hand, I wouldn't be too surprised, but also kind of the case of I question how well that would supposedly mix with a horror game.
I don't know, but that I mean it makes sense. It was 2005, but
Yeah.
and finally on April 26th, if you had a PSP, you could pick up Rengoku the Tower of Purgatory, which is a game I do not remember at all.
No, no recollection on my end.
No, and I just looked at the box art and it doesn't do anything for me. Anyway, moving
Mm.
on to the number one song in America. I'm not even going to bother asking Dave because it is still Candy Shop by 50 Cent featuring Olivia.
It
Because
was his year, from what we've heard.
it's one of his. I would argue that like 2003 is more 50 Cent because that's when he put out Get Rich or Die Tryin'.
Mm.
But yeah, 2005 was still when he was close to at his peak.
Mm.
And finally, for number one film in America, Dave, any guesses?
Mm. Again,
2005?
I did the teeniest bit of research sort of looking into it, and I was somewhat right. There was going to be a Star Wars movie, but that's not going to be until the end of next month.
Yes.
Uh, and I'm not sure if I've got timing right for this one, but I believe around this time there was that one movie that they put out about a book series that was out, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or was that too
Oh,
soon,
you're
too
unfortunately a
soon or
week too
late?
early.
Oh, okay.
This week, it is a movie called The Interpreter, which was a political thriller directed by Sidney Pollack, starring Nicole Kidman, Sean Penn, and a few other people. It was the first film shot inside the United Nations headquarters.
That would definitely possibly cost a pretty penny to do those sort of cases.
Yeah, I don't remember this at all, and apparently it didn't get great reviews at the time, so I don't know.
Mm. Hmm.
But yes, Hitchhiker's Guide will be soon, and we will have a long conversation about that movie, Dave.
Possibly, because I remember watching the movie, and it has been a couple of years, but I do have a bit of recollection of it.
Okay, I know this is off topic, but whatever. Did you ever read the books?
It was a case that I managed at least a good quarter to halfway through the book.
Just the first one? Because there was like 4 or 5 of them.
I believe it was the first one, the kind of
Okay.
case of watching the first movie, you guys kind of grilling me about it, and then getting my hands on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book.
Okay. I highly recommend people read the entire series. It's very, very good. It's very funny. And it is delightfully weird. Yeah, if you haven't read The Hitchhiker's Guide, go read Hitchhiker's Guide. It's very funny. Anyway, moving on to this episode. So, we see a girl named Cameron break up with her long-term boyfriend, Tad. However, before he leaves, Tad shows her a phone which has some embarrassing video of her that she does not even remember when she was drunk. Veronica agrees to help retrieve the phone. Later, Veronica and Logan make out in the bathroom. Veronica and Tad both have their phones confiscated, but only Veronica gets hers back, indicating that Veronica stole it. Well, because of course she did. Keith notices an ad for $50,000 for the whereabouts of Duncan Kane. The two start on the project of finding Duncan before Keith has to leave on a date. Carmen enters Marta's investigations and smashes Tad's phone, but Tad instant messages Veronica with the video again. Tad and Carmen get back together, although it is strongly implied that he is blackmailing her because he absolutely is. A student mocks Tad for his supposed homosexuality, even though he wants to join the Navy. They make references to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was in effect at the time, and was a stupid policy that has since been removed. Veronica talks to Carmen again, and she has a new plan, which involves Carmen inviting Tad on a romantic walk on the pier. Weevil informs Veronica that Duncan bought a cheap car shortly before he ran away. Logan and Duncan go back to his house before Aaron awkwardly comes in. When Veronica is in the bathroom, Logan's friends Dick and Beaver come, leading Veronica to escape. Aaron attempts to be helpful by giving her a ride home and returning her purse, and Aaron is generally supportive of Veronica and Logan's relationship. At the boardwalk, Cameron asks Tad to talk to Seth, an openly gay student, while Veronica takes pictures. Keith gets a lead on Duncan's stolen car, which is in Tijuana, Mexico, but Duncan does not have it. Veronica talks to Mac and asks her to create a sexually explicit website involving Tad, which Mac says she can do in about 45 minutes. Veronica and Carmen talk to Tad, who show him the recently created website, and Veronica says that she will send the website to the Naval Academy if he does not break up with Carmen and delete the video. Logan invites Veronica on a date, indicating that he wants to make their relationship public. Logan also says that he thinks that Aaron likes her. Veronica notices an ad in the newspaper which says that they are seeking M.A.D, who has just been put under notice of a legal proceeding in the classified section. Veronica looks up how soon the situation with her mother is happening, which is in under an hour. Veronica tracks Keith in order to find out what the ad was for, and she follows him to a hotel before finding him with Alicia on the ballroom dance floor. At the school the next day, Veronica and Carmen find out that Tad has released a video of Carmen. Veronica suggests sending the incriminating email in retaliation, but Carmen refuses to oblige with her request. Veronica takes a look at a screenshot from the video and notices the same lanterns as Shelley Pomeroy's house, where she was drugged and assaulted a year earlier. Mac talks to Veronica about a passport she found of Roberto Nalbion, who lives in Argentina and is likely an alias for Duncan. Veronica enlists Mac's help in time-stamping the date of the video, and it turns out to be the same night of Veronica's assault. Clarence Weidman confronts Alicia about her relationship with Keith, who tells her about Wallace's bugging of his office. Veronica gets Weevil and the biker gang to tie Tad to the flagpole, which he tells him that she knows about the roofies the night of Shelley Pomeroy's party where she was assaulted. He says that Logan gave him the drugs, which are not roofies but GHB. At their date, Logan waits alone. Alrighty, so what do we think of this episode?
Oh boy, some things happened. Some very scummy, very bad things happened with the stuff of all the things. So,
Yes.
just the case with the general A-plot of things with the case that Veronica worked on, just scummy, just
Very much so, yes. He is a terrible human being.
yeah. And he deserved all that he got, and even with the case of him blaming Veronica for what Wheatley did for him, it's like, no, Wheatley found out himself, and he just did hit himself, which is good on him.
Yes, Weevil is pretty fucking cool.
Yes, very much so. But then just the case of, oh boy, the case of Mom kind of sending out the things in the paper and whatnot, the security and Kane speaking with Alicia from there to, making sure I got the name.
Yeah, so Clarence Weidman threatens Alicia, saying that if she doesn't break up with Keith, she'll be fired.
Yeah, with that, and just the case of bringing up the case with bugging, the fact that Wallace supposedly did some work and other sorts of things from there. Just, that's going to bring up some consequences of stuff. And just, things of other stuff going on. And just, things are building.
Yes, they are. So, for those of you keeping track at home, here's a few important things that happen in this episode. So Keith discovers that the Canes are offering $50,000 to find Duncan. Mac finds out that they believe that Duncan bought an Argentinian passport for himself, although they haven't confirmed that necessarily. Keith runs a notice in the paper for Leanne Mars so that he will be eligible for divorce, which Veronica obviously ends up finding out about. As we mentioned earlier, Clarence Weidman threatens Alicia with firing unless she breaks up with Keith. Tad Wilson, who, while taped to the flagpole, admits that he used GHB on Cameron and that he got it from Logan. And the most important thing in this episode, probably plot-wise, Carmen can't remember the night of the party where Tad videoed her, and it was the same night that Veronica was assaulted. So, a bunch of things are happening here. So this was a very good episode and an important episode, but not a fun one.
Yeah, no.
Yes. Alrighty. So, if there's nothing else about this episode, next week we'll be discussing an episode called A Trip to the Dentist. Okay. In this episode, Veronica resolves the mystery of her assault a year earlier by talking to previous acquaintances and learning the details of what happened at the party. Meanwhile, Duncan returns from running away, and Veronica and Logan's relationship matures as she reacts to the news that he had roofies the night of the party. So, a bunch of shit's gonna happen. These next two episodes are very good, but they are not always super fun.
Yeah, kind of the marvelous case of shit hitting the fan and the consequences of what happens when that happens.
Yes. So, I have to ask, do you have a theory on who the killer is at this point?
Again, with the little bits of information that we have from here, there's nothing specifically concrete that I could say for a name that could put to it, though a particular thought comes to mind for who supposedly could have done uh, the deed, but it's still kind of in the questioning phase. There isn't anything to either prove it or, as it sits now, disprove it with how things are kind of sitting right now.
Okay, but who? Okay, let me rephrase the question. Who would be at the top of your suspect list?
Like, I think at the very most, with all the particular cases with it there, like with very most things, it's the case with Duncan, just with him having his concerns for his blow up with Veronica, heading off for things now, and the case of there was the bit of evidence that places toward him and just the concern with how he's supposedly sitting mentally. But there's still kind of the case of it's not quite enough, or just there's those little bits of information that aren't there that, if they do come to light, would most likely clear him of the case, probably.
Yeah. Okay. So like that's a pretty reasonable suspect. That I think they've definitely given you a bunch of clues to suspect Duncan. It's interesting. That's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Okay. Because obviously I know who did it, so it's I'm not going to tell you, but that's interesting.
No, in those sort of cases, it's kind of one of those cases of you have enough information to kind of build something on it, but if someone brings something new in, it's most likely going to knock your theory down and change a lot of things on its head. And whether or not that's going to supposedly be the thought, or it's going to take another method for going through the story, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I also feel like they've not really given you just one suspect. Like there's probably 4 or 5 people that you could reasonably think are the killer at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They've definitely not stacked the chips and kind of like telegraphed who it is at this point, I don't think.
Yeah, in those sort of cases there. So,
Alrighty. Well, in that case, I've been Paul.
and I've been Dave.